This is a quilt along. Last week I showed you how to make a coaster, and I showed you how to measure your 1/8 or your 7/8 of an inch on your ruler, and you're going to need one of them measurements for this one. Down below in the description box is all the information for the printout on like what we need to cut for this placemat. So let's go over that. So this is the mat that I mocked up. This is the mat we are going to make today. And this is the mat you're going to learn how to sew. And you're also going to learn how to do some of this very simple free motion quilting. This is done with a ruler. If you want your work to look modern, I highly recommend that these two areas, or three areas, should really be a white fabric. On your printout, I have done you this little A to H to mark all of your pieces like I have done. It just helps to keep everything nice and organised. And all of these letters all along here correlate to these letters here. So whenever I refer to something, I'm going to refer it to its letter so we don't get confused. So with this pattern, I'm kind of throwing you into the deep end because it is a little bit more complicated, but I'm going to take it nice and slow and nice and easy so we don't get lost. So the first sections we're going to sew together are D and G. So I'm going to pick one of my D sections up, which is here, and I'm going to get one of my G sections, and then I am going to put it right sides together. Now I don't have a right side on either of this fabric, but if you do have a right side, it's where the print is. So you're going to put print and print together and sew a line all the way down, and make sure you're sewing at 1/4 inch. That was something else that I did on my last video on how to show you how to make sure that your sewing machine is sewing at 1/4 inch. So make sure that is set up. Baby lock soprano users, you can use 29 with your J foot, 30 with your 1/4 inch foot, or 31 with your J foot. So 29 and 31 are either the left or the right hand side of your J foot, and it will sew you a 1/4 inch. I have polyester thread in my sewing machine. I have my bobbin thread in my bobbin case, and I am just going to sew all the way down this line. My stitch length is at a 2.0. So I'm just going to show you that when I sew my stitch, it is at that 1/4 inch. So 2 of these notches is 1/4 and 1 is 1/8. Also get into the habit of pressing your seam. So we're going to flip this out and we're going to press it. So we have sewn the D and G section. So this is D, this is G. Now we're going to sew a H. Now this is perfect for any of them fabrics that you absolutely love. You've got a favourite fabric, you can put it here. You can also fussy cut this. Fussy cut means that you're going to put the centre of that picture, whatever you like about that fabric, in the middle, and it'll highlight it on your placemat. So let's pick a H, and this is one of my favourite fabrics, and I am going to sew that to the G. I'm going to sew that to the G section. We're going to open that out and press. So right now we have D, we have G, and we have H. Don't worry for a second about this not looking like a triangle. This is one of the easiest ways of showing you how to quilt this. So we're going to take a G section and sew that to H. And then we're going to take another D unit. So take a D, and then we're going to sew that to the G section. Congratulations, you're now sewn the first row of a quilt. So I'm going to put that to one side, and we're going to work on our next row. Now that is going to be E, G, F, G, and E. So let's start with E and G. E is a small square, and G is one of the long rectangles. With right sides together, you're going to sew. You're going to take the only F unit that we have and you are going to sew that to the other side. Then you're going to get a G section, sew that to the end of F, and then you're going to sew the E to the bottom of G. Place your second unit to one side while we work on the next row. You're going to take a D and a G and you're going to sew them together. Take your last H section and sew that to the end of G. Take a G and sew to the end of H. Take a D and sew to the end of G. You're going to press and put that to the other side. So you've now got 3 quilt block sections. Don't worry that they're not the right size right now. We're going to be cutting that in a bit. So let's now work on the next section, which is this one here, E, G, E. So we're going to take an E, we're going to take a G, and we're going to sew that together. Take another E and sew that to the other side of G. Press, put to one side, and we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to get an E and a G, and we're going to put them right sides together and sew. Okay, so right now this is what we have left. We have the 4 A's, which make up the border. So I'm just going to clip them, and I'm going to move them to one side. We've got the 2 B's, which also make up the border. Clip them and put them to one side. I just don't want to lose any parts. And then you've got C, 2 pieces, which also make up a border. So I'm going to put that to one side because we don't need these just yet. Then we've got 2 D's left, and I'm going to pop them to one side, and we will need them shortly. So I'm not going to bother clipping them. And I'm going to bring all of my pieces that I've just sewn over. So this is what you should have, 2 the same, 2 the same, and then 1 on its own. We still need to sew the D section on, but we can't do that just yet. So I'm going to sew these 2 first. So which is this section and this section. I'm going to put these out of the way just so it doesn't confuse you. So we're just looking at 2 sections going on here. So we have things called seams. These are seams, and we're going to match them up with other seams. So this seam here needs to match this seam here, and it's called nesting. And then when you turn them over, you have these 2 seams, and they want to match both sides. That's how you get a perfect joined edge. Now you can, if you want, you can pin, you can clip, do whatever you want. It's still quite small right now, so you shouldn't need to clip anything. But just make sure your seams are matching. And then when you do that, right sides together and sew. Now you can open that up and it reveals your beautiful work. So now you can take one of these D sections. Ignore these squares not being correct. They're going to be changed into triangles. So what we are matching up is that G section. So what we're going to do is, because we've still got that 1/4 inch loss on either side, we're going to fold this part in half. We're going to find the center of this unit. So fold it in half and press, and do the same thing with the square. We're going to fold this in half. I'm going to press, and that creates 2 creases. So you can then find the center of the piece. Don't worry that it's going off a little bit, and sew a 1/4 inch. Push that out and press. The only other way of doing this placemat was doing it in triangles, and it would have got a whole lot of complicated. Trust me, this is the easiest way. Now taking that piece that has that center square, and it doesn't go to the center of the block, it goes to this part here. So this is a seam that we're going to be matching. So we're going to take it from here and you are going to match your seams nicely here, and then you're going to match that other seam here, and then you're going to match this one right at the end. And yes, this is how it looks, trust me, because this is going to be a triangle soon. You're going to open it out, and if your seams aren't lining up, you really do have to don't start from the top and match this point here. You're matching these seams here along here, and then press. Now you're going to take your next unit and you're going to line it up, and you're going to line it up with this here, this and this. So these are the seams that you're going to use as your guide, and then you're going to match it up with this here. Once you've stitched into place, you're going to open it up. And then you're going to take your next unit. This unit goes here, and we're going to match these together. And once again, you're going to fold this D section up to find the central marking, and fold this last piece up to find that central marking, just so we know that we're putting it right in the middle. I'm going to match the two markings, and I'm going to sew into place. If you have a piece off, don't be too concerned. I've got a little piece off here that is just slightly off from all the rest of it. This is just a practice, and you just need to get a hang right now of how to do quilting. That's all this is. So obviously this block doesn't look right, hey? So now we need to put in our triangles, and I'm going to show you how to do that. This corner and this corner, and then the corners going through this triangle, are where we want to cut. So I'm going to grab my quilting ruler. I'm going to line all the corners up, and I'm going to cut right along this edge. Now I'm going to repeat the same thing on the other side. So I am going to cut right along that middle edge. I'm going to concentrate more on this corner, and then cut. You're going to have something that looks like this. Now I'm going to concentrate on the corners of these smaller diamonds here, and then the corners of these points. So I'm going to take my ruler. I'm going to match up all of these points. It doesn't matter if you're not precise. And I'm going to cut. And we're going to do the same thing on this side. We're going to match all of these points up. And then we're going to cut. Now that looks better, hey? So now you're going to take a C, and you're going to put it onto one of these sides, and you're going to sew into place. Take your other side and sew that into place. You're going to attach an A unit to both sides of section B. You're going to take an A unit and attach to both sides of section B, and do the same thing to these last three sections. Now you're going to attach these on the top and the bottom, and you're going to match the seams again like we did before, and you're going to sew all the way down and matching that other seam at the end. Save these little card sections for next time, because this is how I'm going to be doing it. Now you probably have all these loose threads everywhere. Go ahead and snip them off. Over to one side you will have cut your backing piece and a batting section. So basically you want your backing to be at the back, and then you're going to put your batting piece on top of that. You're going to make sure it's nice and flat. And then you're going to place the placemat on top of that. So we want to make sure that we have a bit of overhang on either side. Now, if you're worried about this moving, you can pin it. I'm not going to pin it, but you can if you want to. We're now going to go into a little bit of ruler work. And then when we use rulers, we need to have a ruler foot that goes on our sewing machine, because this can't jump up over the ruler. This is how thick the ruler is, and it runs next to that ruler. Make sure that you buy one of these and get yourself a quilting ruler foot. Make sure you check whether it's low shank or high shank on your sewing machine. Ask your sewing machine store, they'll be able to help you, and also get some gloves. At the back of most machines there's a switch, and that lowers your feed dog so you can do some free motion quilting. I'm going to change my foot. If you are using the Baby Lock Soprano, not only do you have to, so I'm going to put it on a straight stitch with, I'm just going to use a setting number 3. And also in your menu setting, you want to find a setting that says free motion quilting. Otherwise you're going to struggle doing your free motion quilting work. This is off, and then you're going to switch it to on and OK. The ruler has guidelines, and I generally like to put that guideline down on a straight line, and I'm going to stitch along the center. I'm going to stitch inside of this square. So I'm going to place my ruler down so it's on one of these seams here, and then I'm going to press my foot down. And basically what you're going to try and do is don't let this ruler slide, and also you don't have to start at the top, start at the middle, because you've got more control over the ruler at the middle than you have at the top, because it's going to want to move on you. So start in the middle, and then you're going to press the foot down, and you're going to sew along. I'm going to put my gloves on. Now I'm going to keep pressure down on the ruler, and I'm also going to move the quilt with the ruler. And if you need more control of the ruler, you're just going to move that ruler down, pushing it up to the side of the foot and pressing that ruler down and moving. And then I'm going to turn that around, and I'm going to find that line again on that crease. Make sure I've got enough leverage on my ruler. Don't do it from the top, no control. Always think you're going to just do little small things. You're not using the full length of the ruler. And then you're going to move it down, and you go so on. Now what I'm going to do along that line is a curve, a little small curve from one corner to the other corner. At this point in time, we're not bothered about how accurate the stitches look. We're not bothered about anything like that. We just want to get a feel for how to do this. And there's no rush. Don't feel like you're pushing a lawnmower and you don't know how to stop it. Just take your foot off the pedal. Adjust the speed to whatever speed setting that you like. And then off you go. It's going to get in your way again. I've got nothing fancy in my sewing thread. It's just regular Gooseman cotton. There's no need to spend too much money at this moment because we're just learning. So this is a design that we've done. Hope you can see that. I'll show you on the other side. You probably can't see it that well. But if you use just a white plain fabric, you can't really see the stitching, so it's very forgiving. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm not going to do much talking, and you can see what I'm doing. And look, there's a lot of excess of this ruler here. All I did for these parts was just straight lines. And then you can use that seam to travel down. And I'm using my previous stitch line for my straight line. And then I just travel along the seams to get to my next rectangle. What I want you to think about when you're doing free motion quilting is that it is free motion quilting. You are not a machine, so it doesn't matter if them lines aren't parallel. It's supposed to look like it's done by somebody, not a computer. Otherwise, you would get a computer to do it for you. All I did for that middle square was some curves again. Now for the triangles, all I'm going to do is a triangle on the inside. This is my center point, so this is where I want my point to be, and then another one that's a smaller one at the top. So this is what my triangles look like, and then on this triangle I'm just going to do an L shape here. And this is what it looks like. And now on the border, I'm just going to do a straight line right down the middle. When I get to the blocks, I'm just going to do a crisscross. Now I'm hoping that you did have a good go at that and you didn't chicken out. Now we're going to cut off the excess. So we're going to follow along the top of that placemat and we're going to cut off the excess. I love binding quilts and I recommend that you get one of these. I am not paid nor sponsored at any portion of this video, but this is really going to help you as a beginner. You're going to take your binding and you're going to have 2 strips of it. Now you're going to make sure that you cut this selvage end off. You don't want to incorporate that. That's where it was in the loom. So I want to create a diagonal mark on my fabric, and the width of my fabric is at 2.5 inches. So I want to do a 2.5 inch across here and onto the corner of my fabric there. And then I'm going to mark a line with a friction pen. Okay, so you're going to have the line that we marked going one way, and then the one that we didn't mark going another way, and then we're going to sew it together. And then once you've done that, you can open it up and it's going all the way across nicely. Now what you're going to do is cut off the bulk, but don't cut into stitches. Cut about 1/4 inch away. Now on the side that we have our seam, we're going to fold it in half. I'm going to do that all the way along the binding and pressing it. So here's my placemat, and I like to hand stitch my binding to the back. So basically what I'm going to do is I want to make sure that I have at least 8 inches, which is about there. And I am going to start sewing from here. Just going to put a underclip in. And I'm going to start sewing from here and going to the corner. Make sure that your sewing machine is sewing to 1/4 inch. Remember, we can check that by testing the sewing strip out. Or if you're a Baby Lock Soprano user, you can use stitches 29, 30 or 31. Have a look in your instruction manual. Numbers 30 is for if you've got a 1/4 inch foot with guide. So I'm going to sew. And I'm going to stop just like 1/8 of an inch at the end. Now we know what 1/8 of an inch looks like because we learned that in the last video, which was the coaster. So like I said, you might want to go back and watch that if you haven't already. Now you're going to lift all this binding up, all that goes up, and then it flips back down onto itself. And then you're going to continue on with sewing. Don't start at the very top. Start about 1/8 of an inch down and then sew. And then stop again 1/8 at the bottom. I want to find the center of this placemat. So I'm going to find the center. It's about there. I'm going to put a clip in it. Trim this part so it ends at the center of the placemat. So on this ruler, there's different placements for if you want to do 1 3/4, 2 inches, 2 1/4 and 2 1/2. So I am going to line my tool up with the 2 1/2. And then what we're going to do, just watch that that doesn't slip. We're going to bring the left-hand side over and then we're going to fold it at that 2 1/2 inch. And then just where that fold is, we are going to cut. So this is a part where most people get a little bit confused. Okay, so we have this like this, and we have this fold here. So this fold on the left hand side is going to go up, and then this fold here is going to meet. So let's pretend that these are right sides and this is a right side. And that is going to come over and meet across here. So that's why we had to leave that gap open. And we're going to just put some wonder clips on there. It's going to be easier if you roll your placemat up. And you're going to have to make sure that everything is laid down flat, like so. The binding on 2 1/2 inches is going to be so much easier to do than if you pick a smaller. So make sure you go like bigger until you get the hang of binding. So from here, we're going to make sure that our binding strip is pointing up like this, because we now want to do a line going across. Carefully take your clips or your pins out. Make sure you're not going to move it. And then you're going to place this diagonal line across, and it's meeting the 2 corners. And you're going to grab your friction pen and you're going to mark across this line here. Put your fingers back on here and then wonder clip it into place. So it's still folded over, so one's going across and one's going down. And then you're going to sew all the way across. Take your wonder clips out. You've got some bulk in here, so you just want to cut that away. So again, eyeball about 1/4 of an inch and cut. Open up your placemat. And there you go. That's absolutely perfect. So there's no fudging it or anything. This really does help. I really do recommend it. So go ahead and sew this into place. Now what we're going to do now is flip that binding back. If you do have longer threads, just cut them off so they don't get in the way when you're doing your hand stitching. And you're going to turn these over. Do it all the way around. And then what I like to do is get some wonder clips. Start clipping this into place. I love hand sewing. I find it very therapeutic. I got into English paper piecing as well. Like if you have all these kind of like threads here, just cut them away. so you can be part of the I Love Binding Club with me. So this is how I get it ready for hand quilting. So I have my runner clips on and I can go ahead now and hand stitch. This is the finished placemat, and please like and comment. It helps the YouTube algorithm when you do that, and it helps to get more people like you learning how to quilt. Also, subscribe to my channel so you don't miss my next tutorial. Goodbye.